Chris Landry, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game here in Tuscaloosa.
It's good to be with you. I'm doing well, and thanks for having me. Good to be with you.
No doubt. I want to spend some time certainly talking about the news of college football. I'd love to get it from a coaching perspective with what happened yesterday with the latest NCAA situation there in Oxford, Mississippi. Any thoughts on what's happened to Ole Miss?
Well, as the news comes out and you study and talking with people there, it's certainly bad. Anytime you get hit with the lack of institutional control, that's the worst sign you can get from the NCAA. And I think that as it gets more and more into the process of appeal, and you really better have everything in line, the facts to disprove what they have done, or else it's going to get really bad. At this point, it's just speculative on what the sanctions are going to be, but I am very comfortable in saying that it's going to be very heavy, and I'm starting to sense from Ole Miss that it's going to get worse. It's getting hotter for you, Freeze. I think it really is going to come across in one way, shape, or form. Either you knew it and you were a part of it, or you just turned a blind eye to it, or you were just incompetent in leading your program. It's going to be one or the other. Now, knowing you and knowing people that are around him, and even guys that have coached with him, they tell me no one spends more time, and I hear this a lot, spends more time talking to their coaches about the importance of, making sure that you do things the right way, and you will lose your job if you do things that break NCAA rules. So if that is indeed the case, this is going to be quite a blow. But there is no doubt there is always antennas raised when a typical non-power, I should say, ends up starting to recruit at a high level. There's always things that come about of it, and I put something up on the website recently, and some of the stuff is starting to come out and leak out about how they've gone about, showing, other schools that may have been involved and whatnot. It's going to get uglier, and it's going to be a black eye for the conference and certainly for Ole Miss.
Chris, I want to focus on the Crimson Tide, and I want to get your thoughts. I mean, from someone who has worked with Nick Saban, when you look at this past year, the Alabama football team really focused on that offensive side of the football, and then we might work our way to the defensive side. But in the offense, what did you see from your perspective with your expert eyes?
Well, I've seen really an evolution of the past couple of years of trying to incorporate more of the RPOs, the run-pass options, the mobility of the quarterbacks, the play-action ability, the dual-threat option, to create more explosiveness in the passing game, to get defenses misaligned, to force them into, dictating to them what personnel they use. That is all changed as a byproduct of what Alabama defensively, and Nick has seen defensively on how people defend them, and keeping them on the field. And so I think that he's wanted to do more of that. Thus is the reason he brought in some guys that had some experience in that type of an offense. And I think they have, quite frankly, evolved fairly nicely. But one of the things that you always have to be careful of, and it's something that, we've talked about, is you have to not get too far away from your identity, in that if you have the superior talent, and quite frankly, you coach it and develop players as well as anybody or better than anybody, then you can't get too far away from what you do best, and that is controlling the line of scrimmage, winning at the line of scrimmage. And I think in that process of maybe doing some of those things that, quite frankly, have been real impressive. I mean, let's call it like it is, with all due respect. Winning a conference title with Blake Sims at quarterback is pretty good, managing things around it, and winning a national title. Dick Coker did a really nice job, but I think they've been able to win around the quarterback. I think what they've tried to do is, seeing other outstanding quarterbacks giving them fits, they've wanted to do more with having that dynamic quarterback. But I think that you have to be careful not to lose the line of scrimmage And I think in some regards that's what happened towards the end of last year. I think once Lane Kiffin got his job at FAU, his sense of loyalty of, the purpose of why he was there to further his career had left. And I think there began to be a lot of loose ends that couldn't be tied up well enough. Losing to a very good Clemson team by one play is pretty doggone good, but probably could have been different. The result could have been different had some of those issues not taken place, some of those distractions had not taken place.
Chris Landry right now, LandryFootball.com, right here inside the game as we move forward. Chris, I want to ask you, when you look at Jalen Hurts as a quarterback, what do you see?
Young guy, a lot of athletic ability, a lot of poise, a lot of ability to not get rattled, not get real high, not get real low. Fundamentally, not a very good passer at this point. He has very little experience. I think he can be effective with some of the RPOs and be able to, on rollouts, be effective with the run pass options that can really make this offense go. But he's going to have to become more effective throwing the football. I think what they did very effectively is had him protect the football. In Alabama's case, there's not many games, if any, during the season that they need really great play from the quarterback. In some cases they do, but in most cases they don't. They just don't need negative plays. But I think this whole move was for the championship level to be able to compete if you go up against a Deshaun Watson. And so I think he's a talented young guy. The young kid who I've studied coming out of Hawaii, too, is a very talented young guy. It's going to be interesting to see. I think the biggest problem they had was that they did not get enough out of the passing game when they felt they needed to, and to some degree probably didn't stay as patient with the running game as a result of that. But what I see is a young guy that has some potential, has some ability, but they're going to need him to develop more as a passer. There's no question about it. And I think one of the things that you can do is be more focused on the downhill run. And I wonder if Bo Scarborough's in the game, if it's a moot point, and we're talking about them winning the championship despite all of this stuff. I think they need to continue to go back to that, but allow the quarterback some freedom to make plays outside the pocket. I think you can do both. I don't think you have to be the typical drop-back guy. In fact, the drop-back guys, the Cooper Batemans, the Blake Barnetts, they're gone. So they're going forward with the guys that they need to develop as passers and probably more the run-pass option types.
Well, when you look at Sark, to me, it was really the same way as what Lane Kiffin would brought, offensive philosophy. To me, I'm not saying it was a perfect storm, but it was a situation where Nick Saban, he made a quick decision with Sark. He brought him in, brought him as the OC, but then when he left for Atlanta, we see Nick Saban going completely sort of a different direction with bringing in Brian DeBall. I'm just curious what you think about DeBall.
Well, this was in play for quite some time. Sark came because of Kiffin, and it was another set of eyes to help Kiffin. I think everyone knows that Alabama's put together a phenomenal staff and support staff, so they can bring somebody in, pay them very well, to be another set of eyes, and that's what Sark was done. And he was done with the idea of Lane's probably going to be gone next year, and I'm going back a year ago. And so it was an idea that, here's a good opportunity for a guy that can be a coordinator, much like Mike Locksley was brought in for the same reason, that, we'll see how it develops, and it's a chance for Nick to be able to observe and get a feel on-the-job training, so to speak, for who you might want to go forward with as your offensive coordinator. So philosophically, it made a lot of sense. But as things kind of approached, even though there's a lot of similarities between Sark and Kiffin in terms of philosophies, there's a difference in personalities. Lane is immature and not very organized. He's very creative, very artistic-minded, and Nick is more of a scientist, whereas maybe Lane is more of an artist. Sark is not quite. He's very artistic, but a little bit more organized than Lane. But the issues are with Sark pretty early, and it started with when he got thrusted into that position calling plays in the championship game. Is, you have to be really, really thick-skinned and strong emotionally to handle working for Nick Saban. He's hard to work for, tough, fair, but hard to work for. And one of the things that I always felt, knowing all three, quite frankly, very well, that I just didn't sense that would be something that Sark would work out well. The whole, going to the Falcons situation, that's been in play for a long time. Nick knew about it. I knew about it, so I know Nick knew about it. It was more of, he has a relationship with Dan Quinn. When he got fired from USC, he went and spent some time with Dan Quinn because there's mutual friends, obviously, with Pete Carroll. Nick Saban knows Dan Quinn. Dan was the defensive line coach for Nick with the Dolphins for a year. So there's a connection there. And I think there was a feeling that, from both sides, again, knowing what I just said, that, Sark's probably not going to be emotionally in the best situation to deal with working for Nick. And Nick, I don't think would have been as comfortable with a guy that maybe wasn't as emotionally as tough as you need to be in that position. So I think they kind of felt like this was headed that way. The reason why it took some time is because the whole Kyle Shanahan Super Bowl, that was going to be a late announcement. This was coming down the pike a long time, and I think Nick is wanted to go back to more guys that he feels comfortable working with, that has a comfort level of knowing what to expect working for Nick. And we'll see how it works and how it affects the offense. But Brian Daboll, I've known Brian for a long time. He's a youngster and helped him get his first GA job with Nick at Michigan State. And, so he knows Nick and, of course, went to New England and he went to a few places and spent some time in Cleveland and Kansas City, but he's on the Patriots staff, coached tight ends. But what people may not be aware of is he was the guy that was going to be the next offensive coordinator in New England for Belichick had Josh McDaniels decided to take another job like this 49ers job. So it is someone that has an understanding of a lot of what they want to do, but also being around this Patriots offense. Not that he was running the Patriots offense, he was not, but he certainly has a keen understanding of when they want to go up tempo, how they want to do that, how they want to call plays in that situation, how you don't have Tom Brady doing it, and you don't have that at the college level. But I think he has some of the ideas, but yet, is going to really know what Nick wants. In essence, let me sum it up this way. I think Lane Kiffin and Nick Saban worked well because Nick kept him on a short leash, and he got the creativity, the artist out of him, but didn't let him go off the reservation, as Lane tends to do as a play caller at times. And I think it just became tiresome for Nick holding that leash as tight as it was. And I think he didn't want to go down potentially that path, although I think Sark would have been much more, how do you want to say this, Ryan, obedient to Nick, or much more easier to control. I think Sark, might have had a hard time with his background and pressures dealing with the pressure of working for Nick, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes complete sense. Let me sort of say this by talking to the audience here in Tuscaloosa. I know they've won a national title in 2015, but you got to understand that this audience that we talk to daily here in Tuscaloosa, they've really lost 2 national titles because we were not dedicated enough to doing the physical brand of running the football. Ohio State, they had a chance. They were averaging 9-point-something yards on the left side. They went away from it, tried to get Blake Sims to do things that really he wasn't capable of doing. And then in this championship game against Clemson, did not run the football enough. Bo went down, and then they sort of went away from that and tried to throw the football. Will Brian Daboll bring a running mentality back to Tuscaloosa?
Well, yeah, I think that is a big part of it. I think, though, to win championships, you're going to have to be able to throw the football, and you're going to have to be able to make people pay for loaded fronts. Because I think part of the reason why you have success running it is if you have the ability to spread people out or you force them, defenders out of the box, then you've got more running room. Running against 8 and 9 man fronts consistently is kind of like what Les Miles tried to do at LSU. It'll knock you back to where you're losing 2 or 3 games a year. You have to have, and Nick Saban has evolved, and he understands you've got to throw it some. Now, there are times, certainly, where you want to just punish people and finish people with the run. I think that successful football, and particularly when I think of successful football under Nick Saban, is you want to be able to take advantages. People are loading the front early in the game. You want to take some chances in the passing game, score points out of the passing game, and then win the game with the running game, where you wear people down, where the runs that are getting 2 yards and 3 yards become 7, 8, 12, because they are worn out. And I think that needs to come back. I think at times in the playoff games, championship playoff games, they got a little bit too horizontal, and I think that they had chances. Listen, all they had to do, and I say all they had to do, to finish that game against Clemson is just keep their defense off the field. The defense was on the field too much. And you've got a great defense that I don't care how great you are. If you're on the field too much, they're going to be dead legs. So the pass rush is not as good. The ability to get to the play is not as good. So and they're substituting and they're fresh. Offensive linemen don't have to run long. Defense, the most difficult thing physically to do in football is rush the passer and chase in pursuit and come back and do it again. And when you have to do it against up-tempo, trust me, you're dead. So the key for Alabama, I thought, was being able to just get a couple of first downs and be able to finish it that way. They didn't need any more points. They needed to be able to keep their defense fresh. And had they been able to do that, they probably could have finished it off defensively or, perhaps just put the game away. And listen, it's different levels of football. Quite frankly, it's why the Atlanta Falcons couldn't put the Patriots away. It's played great defense for a half, but offensively it's called playing complementary football. That, when I think of playing complementary football, nobody does that better than Nick Saban. And I thought they got away from it a little bit, not by his liking, but I thought it just kind of went away, and I think they felt a little bit of pressure that we're not able to run it, and I think we're losing line of scrimmage, and we got to take some chances, and they probably took too many chances with the young quarterback in a game where, they would have won any other game, but playing against a championship caliber team, I think this is where Alabama is, Ryan. It's about, Nick will tell you, it's every week, it's every practice, and it is. Everything leads to, ultimately at this point, being able to manage playing against opponents that may be a little bit different than you see on a week-in, week-out basis in the conference, in a playoff, and being able to match them. So you might face that great quarterback or, something that is unique, and you got to be able to maybe compress the game a little bit. And I think they felt they got away from it some.
I've got about a minute and 30 seconds before I've got to take a break. I just want to ask you a quick question. You've worked with Nick Saban. Is this the same Nick Saban that you work with, and how have you seen him grow as a coach?
The thing that makes him the best is he constantly is growing. He's constantly learning. I mean, he may be the ultimate teacher, but he's maybe as good a student of football as I've ever seen, and he's a lot like Bill Belichick. Still do a lot with him as well. And the thing about them is every offseason they're constantly looking at trying to improve something. How can we improve this coverage inside the red zone? How can we defend the bunch set a little bit better? How can we do this or that? It's, who's doing this better? And he's constantly studying that. How can we go about, improving our philosophy of, just look at it. Look at guys, the Mark Barron type guys. Those were the safeties of recent years. Now those guys can't play safety for Alabama. Those guys would play linebacker. Hey, we got to get more corner-looking safeties that can stay on the field more and play in sub-packages, because sub-packages are your base packages now. I mean, he adjusts on a fly, but he adjusts everything in the program, including changing the philosophy on, hey, here's what our critical factors used to be for safeties, here what they are now, and here's how we have to go about doing it. He's constantly trying to learn, and Bill Belichick is, and that's why they're, I think, the best maybe that's ever coached at the pro and college level.